Tonight, we take a deep dive in the conversation the president had last week on Saturday, trying to understand especially the gaps he was mentioning. He mentioned the justice system. He went on to mention the trade order and also talked about the wetlands that need reclaiming. He further discussed corruption. But we take a deep dive to understand what did the president mean by the gaps that are there. But also, he talked about things in the history, about commanders, but also some people that have made a career or have become opportunists in government. We look at this discussion, but also we look at the impact to the economy, to the socio-economic ability of Ugandans, but also when we look at the trade order, wetlands, in the view of the population boom that is happening in this country. Shall we be able to contain what we have right now? We take analysis in that. But let me make a conversation with the people that are with me in the studio. On my immediate left, Honorable Rose Obiga, who is a woman representative of the people in Terego district. She's with us this evening. Honorable, it's good to have you.
Thank you.
The yellow is, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for coming back after a very long time.
A pleasure, and I'll always be available.
Next to Honorable Rose is Honorable John Tire, who is a member representing the people of Bugabula North, and he's also the chairperson of the legal committee in Parliament, in the 12th Parliament. Honorable John, good evening, and thank you for making your appearance here.
Well, thank you so much. I always go through the same trouble of explaining that actually my name is John Taylor.
Taylor.
From Bugabula County, North
It sounds like Taylor, not...
the Honorable Justin adds on Banks, but it's John Taylor, and pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Next to the Honorable is Honorable Mukasa Fred Mbide, the Deputy President of the Democratic Party. He's with us this evening. Honorable, good evening, and it's good to have you back.
Yes, good evening, Timothy. Thank you. I equally greet the colleagues on the panel and the viewers.
Next, she is making her appearance back on the show, the Right Honorable Justine Kasule Lumumba, the Minister of ICT and National Guidance. She's with us this evening. Right Honorable, it's good to have you back.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Good evening, colleagues. And good evening, the organizers and the viewers. I'm happy to be here.
The last time you were here, we were talking about SDGs.
Yes, but I also spent the whole day here today.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Lastly but not least, the Honorable Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, representing the people of Kinkizi East in Kanungu District, and the Substantive Minister of Health. He's with us this evening. Good evening, sir. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Timothy. Good evening, fellow panelists. Good evening, viewers. Thank you for inviting me. I am happy to be here behind the headlines. Maybe I'm in front of the headlines now.
We shall see if you're in front of the headlines. So, that is our discussion tonight, and you can be part of our discussion. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there. We're on Spaces on X, drop your comment there. The number to drop your comment on WhatsApp or text is 0709 60 25 92. I'll repeat that, 0709 60 25 92. Let's get this conversation started. And Right Honorable Justine, it is befitting that you were in State House to listen to this conversation. What did you depict from what the President was speaking about in this whole conversation that he gave us on Saturday?
What I learned from that the press conference by His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was that he respects elders, he respects institutions, he respects individuals. Why I begin with that is that he informed us that he had a discussion, he had a meeting with the Interreligious Council. And the Interreligious Council has representatives of our religious leaders, except leaders from the African religion. But all the others are represented. So, and the issues that they had raised with him, he had now to come and talk to the whole country, because they informed him that these are the issues in public. And he took off time to come and explain what his take of those issues are. So that is one I learned from that day, that we must, as a leader, you don't work in isolation of other institutions, of other leaders, whether constitutional or not, but they are stakeholders in the society. So he said that I discussed with him issues to do with justice and human rights. And the president told us how he had listened to him and how they had told him about issues to do with the peace and respect of human rights. And he also said the people had, the team had recognized the achievements of NRM, but they brought out salient issues on issues to do with the justice and human rights. And he said they were told him that the issue is that people are worried, people are saying bizemu, meaning what the past regimes had done that were not good, now those things were reoccurring. So he explained and said, no, it's not that we are getting back to that, but it's because there has been some laxity by some of the stakeholders. We, the politicians, the religious leaders themselves, some cultural leaders, the technical people, that when the certain individuals go out to abuse human rights of other people, we don't come out to condemn. And that has always caused worry in the minds of the people. And he brought out the example and showed the videos where NRM people were beaten in 2020, 2021. On Kampala streets, anybody wearing yellow would get the wrath of the lawless people on the street. And he showed the videos. And I remember very well, as a former Secretary General, we had one girl who contested as a youth councillor for Chira municipality. She won NRM, I will not mention her name for security reasons, and she was beaten by the people who were her competitors in the race and some members of their party. She was beaten badly that we had to go and carry her out of that place at night. They waylaid her on her way back, celebrating victory as an individual because her colleagues had gone. And we had to bring her as far as Mulago Hospital. So when it comes to issues of beating, you remember even the president even referred to me that Kasule Lumumba came here crying, saying they were beating people. At that time, wearing yellow in Kampala had been forbidden, had been looked at as a crime in quotes by some of the people who are basically supporters of the competitors of NRM, because we were now warming up for elections, and I would beat individuals on the street. The unfortunate bit is that even security were not picking this. So I went to the president. I used to tell him, you know, this is happening. He would not believe me because I'm a civilian and no training. And when I would say, please, where is the intelligence in this country? Why is this happening? So the day he says I went to him, I went and told him that, why don't you protect NRM people? Who are you protecting in this country? People are being beaten left and right. By the way, not only in town, but even in the villages. And when it happened that when the elections came, even some people were being stopped to go and vote because they know these elders are going to vote certain people, they are going to vote NRM. They were stopping some of them to go and vote. And this information was not coming through. So I was, when the president explained, he was actually blaming all of us, not to a particular section of people. He was saying, when they were beating the NRMs, where were you to condemn the acts of such people? You keep quiet when they are beating others. When it happens to others, that's when you come up to talk and condemn. That's when you now come to tell me, where were you to come and tell me when this was happening? Okay. So those are some of the gaps we are saying. When it happens to somebody, whether belongs to whatever political party, we leaders in the different sections of the society, whatever level of leadership, we should come up and condemn, so that if it happens to this one, we should say it's not right. It happens to this one, we should say it's not right. And also he brought in the issue of the trade order. And said what has been happening is that we have organized the trade, where there are those who are doing it in malls, there are those who have markets on the roadsides, and these days even there are people who sell their products in the gardens. But we have people who, some claim they don't have where to go because they are not, the market space, the space in the markets is not enough, especially here in Kampala. So they come and put their products or their merchandise on the streets, especially if you look in Kampala, on Lumu Street, on Nachivubo, on Wilson, sometimes even Sir Apollo Kagwa and the other places in Kampala. And the president was saying that when these people come and sell on the streets, first of all, they deny the space for the pedestrians to move. So they have now to be pushed to move in the road, competing for the little space with the cars, which causes also accidents. Then these who are selling food on the roadside, they make the food be subjected to conditions that are not healthy for us, the consumers of the food. When they are selling, you find somebody seated in the sun from the morning to evening, but he's selling some food where somebody has to come and buy and eat. So he says that condition is not good, and that can also cause problems in the community, and that it becomes so difficult for the Ministry of Health to come and trace where the problem started, because they are not easy to trace, like if it had happened in a shop. But also he raised another point, that another issue is when they are on the streets, there is a lot of lawlessness, pickpocketing, beating people, slapping people, grabbing bags of people, of the women, grabbing their phones, so that it becomes a crime scene. That's more or less what he was saying. But he said also, when we have outbreaks of this, the Ebola, the whatever problem, it becomes difficult to trace because people are so squeezed and the spread is so wide, so it is not easy. But remember, these who are on the streets hardly pay taxes. Okay. And yet those who are in the shops pay taxes and pay rent. And the landlords have to pay back the loans, they have to pay taxes, and even some have to pay rent. So it also distorts that kind of trade. And yet these are registered with licenses, and yet these ones on the streets don't have licenses. But he went ahead and said Kampala City Authority, local governments should build markets and give space to these people so that they don't have to be on the streets.
Thank you very much. We've been joined by Professor Waswabalunywa, an economist, a philanthropist, but also the newest SEC member. Good evening, Sandy. It's good to have you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations. I'll come to you in a bit. Let me come to Honorable Mbide and Honorable John here. The President talked about the law. He went on to talk about, bail and all these things. But let's be specific. He talked about, and the question I want to put to you, Honorable Mbide and Honorable John, is the law politics or is politics the law?
You want me to come in?
Yes.
Before the chair of the committee does. First of all, I would state personally, as an advocate of all courts of judicature, that prosecution is not illegal. It is not illegal in the whole world. It is actually a legal framework through which justice is provided, the truth is discovered, and actively society is definitely led politically in accordance to the law. So, number two, I would succinctly also state that politics follows the law. So clearly, when the law is being established, it is in respect of the governing entity at the time. There is what we call, in terms of political justice, we call it lawfare. There's what we call, instead of calling it a warfare, this is called a lawfare. That is an instance where, for example, a challenge arises, where a regime can use law as an instrument of oppression. Now, what do you do in such instances? You now look at the clients. Who are the recipients? What are they doing? What is the character and the combination that forms, for example, the opposition? What is the degree, the relative political maturity of the opposition masses and leaderships? Now, in an event where you have got counterfeit opposition, that is the kind of leadership that definitely has no recourse to In terms of their own discussions, there is no policy. There is no clear guideline in terms of what to critique. Otherwise, they have now resorted to what we call disruptive instead of constructive opposition. Now, what does the state do? They adopt the lawfare as the appropriate answer to such an anomalous existence in a country. So in Uganda, we have got two types of opposition politics. There is the disruptive and the constructive. Now, the constructive political agenda seeks to negotiate for democracy. The disruptive political agenda has a message that is discombobulated. It cannot be understood properly. It is a complete enigma. While they are going to the north, they promise that the president of the Republic of Uganda will leave before 2031. Now, that one does not have recourse to an election. Because they have run short of the know-how in terms of critiquing government policy, government management skills and styles, they tend now to instigate, even when they are discussing judicial independence and judicial democracy, they instead instigate what we call, the population refer to it as mob justice, but it is called in law extrajudicial vigilantism, where now the population have been confirmed and convinced, and I'm now referring to the opposition population, have been convinced that actually recourse to judges, recourse to courts is a logical impossibility. So accordingly, the solutions lie with the hands of those that have got the capacity to answer the questions of the day in terms of law. Now, what is happening? In the 90s, of course, we had democracies emerging. Political parties started emerging. By 2002, there was a recourse to, at Kananasiki, which was a meeting of course, which cemented the Africa Action Plan, an order that political parties should be opened. If the entities, the partnering entities with the G8 will now entertain and be entertained, and of course help themselves to grants and partnerships with the G8. Now it started, and in Uganda, we had the political parties opened. Now, what is happening? Of course, when you look at, of course, the statistics in Africa, for example, almost 58% of Africans are now believing we have started deteriorating in terms of democratic tendencies. There is something that I cannot live without. There is some difference in terms of the approach by government this time. There was a time when government was involved in illegal fishing in terms of accountability before the law. They would only arrest the small people. In fact, it was safer for you to declare for presidency if you were to be given the latitude of no arrests. And that would happen. Clearly, many people disappeared from, of course, the lists of arrests simply because they are viewed as presidential candidates. Now we are looking at a changing state of affairs, that the big people are now the subject of arrest. We would like to welcome that one in the corruption arena, in the political arena, that will assist us in curbing counterfeit politics.
Okay.
There is a type of politics obtaining in Uganda which is completely enigmatic, that some people could be involved in a meeting and others are seen as almost unfit to join such a meeting. Why? Because the debates of the day in such meetings have no valid political democratic import.
Thank you.
So,
Honorable John, you know, the president, just like Honorable Mbide has mentioned, he mentioned mob justice. He also mentioned that some of the people that are accused go before court and keep quiet. And he said that one needs to be told you are guilty. But also he said statements that have been around. He will not swear, tajja kurahira. He also went on to say, we shall ban Kampala. Is there a legal gap within the system that is failing what the president is talking about?
Well, thank you. The president this time in his speech, I think was when it came to the issue of rule of law and human rights, was smarter than ever before in any speech. One, he understood clearly, and I saw the president of the Uganda Law Society in exile trying to jump on it, the sub judice rule. they wanted to accuse him of speaking about a matter that is in court. But he made a very, very minimal reference and of general facts to the matters that are pertaining, relating to the accused persons. Then he raised a question of human rights and then rule of law. He said, but if you believe in rule of law and you've been arrested and you have gone to court and you believe in your innocence, why don't you accept to go on trial, prove that you are innocent while the state is willing to adduce evidence to show that you are guilty? Now today, something happened in the courts, I think I'm sure you followed. The ruling by Justice Waguma on the bail application for one of the accused persons who are involved in this political discourse. When they said the ground for applying for bail is because the advocates that are supposed to give him legal representation have been put under arrest, they are not available. What actually Justice Waguma said, but I have received the confirmation that you have 50 different institutions and individuals who are willing to provide you the legal service that you need. So there is no reason actually, this is not a ground for us to give you bail because we want the proceedings to go on. The bottom line is, President Museveni comes out smart and says, you have accused me of not producing accused suspects in court. You are in court. You plead innocent from day one. Adduce your evidence to prove your innocence before the courts of law. So it became a very difficult position, and I'm learning a word from Council Mbide of the counterfeit opposition. I don't want to borrow it, but I appreciated it because it's a new one. And you know, with Mbide, you will always learn something new in English every time you have an interaction. Should we have suspects released because they have frustrated proceedings in court, or should we keep them incarcerated until they are either proven innocent or guilty? That's the president's position, and he insists that accused persons should face the law, should face justice by adducing evidence of their innocence. Now, that makes it very difficult on the side of those who are saying that it's an unlawful detention. First of all, Article 28 is very clear. One of the tenets of a fair hearing is a speedy trial. And we have put up all avenues for you to receive a speedy trial, but you are not utilizing it. That's President Museveni's position in his speech. So why don't you utilize that? Now, it becomes very difficult for the perpetrators on the other end to challenge him. That's why I'm saying he came out smarter than ever before. And he did not divulge into the details because he knows there are different people who are in courts of law who are having the same challenge, what he calls attempted delay of justice, by saying, let's not go on trial. Just release us on bail, we shall go back home, we shall tell the people we have won, and then we keep coming and going and coming. Then he makes a very amazing reference to the Honorable Miriam Atembe. Literally everyone saw her limping to court on our first day of appearance. When bail was granted, she has all smiles. Either smiles that she had finally been freed, or that the health had actually improved on the expectation that she was going home. Now, that's why I'm saying he was smarter than ever before, because all of these issues, he brought them to the public to counter what others have been putting, what he calls falsely against the position that stands. Now, it will become very difficult for someone out there who seeks to depend on the law to challenge any continuous proceedings of suspects who are in court. Bottom line, let the proceedings go on, let the rulings be made for either guilty or innocent.
Thank you. Honorable Rose, I know you spend both time in Terego and spend time both in Kampala, and you have your feet on the ground to know exactly what the temperature is. Where are the contestations of the public? Why is there a bit of edginess in this season, in this term of the public, especially when you hear what the president is saying, tends to feel what's happening? Why does the public seem to be agitated?
Well, the public we're talking about here are city-born or city-based. But back in Terego, when the president is addressing pertinent issues the way he did, honestly, there's a lot of attention put. And what they always want is clarity, how the message previously goes to them without the president's clarification. When I went to Terego, I didn't find any agitation. Yeah, back home, no. I wouldn't want to say this is what is taking place in Terego, no, or maybe in West Nile.
When you hear the statements by the president where he says Bizemo, which really means the past has come back to us now, when he says statements were said he will not swear in Luganda, statements were said that the ladies have Batusibieka Kasaja. When you hear those statements by the president, have you heard those before? And where are they coming from in the public?
Now when you take me to Luganda.
That's why I had to translate.
I know you saw my video.
Yes.
I don't. We in Terego, we don't speak Luganda because of just one word, Bambi. But however, we don't. It's so bad, traumatizing, and. But of course, anybody who contests with you, remember the president contested with young people, and they think the old is to die, not knowing age is called, old is called. Of course, that aside, the wishes is not what God wants. And of course, some arrests, yes. People look for sympathy here and there, but when realities are brought to light, I don't find any challenges.
You find no challenges there?
No.
Let me come to the Honorable Dr. Chris. Honorable, when the president spoke, what did you pick from his speech? And are there any areas we can be able to address that you feel the public is questioning, or were they answered?
Well, first of all, for a president to listen to what the public is raising and complaining about, and finding time to come and address the public is a good thing, because he could have chosen to keep quiet. But on his own volition, he arranges to address the public and be able to explain some of the concerns in the public. We should applaud him for that. And he spoke to a number of issues. I think the one you are raising, to do with the human rights, to do with security, and he was basically giving the history of this country and what drove him and his friends or colleagues to the bush to fight the liberation war, and the kind of order that they tried to restore under the NRM. I think what I see as a fundamental issue is that, and we have addressed this severally on these shows, that when we went into multi-party politics, there is a kind of politics which has been constructed, especially opposition politics, of extremism, of promoting belligerence, of defiance, and those are the kind of languages he was referring to. When you go for elections and Ugandans make a decision, then a section of the population that has participated, but unfortunately have not made it, they say, "Tuwalemese, we shall not allow the elected leaders to be sworn in." That kind of defiance and belligerence and the extremism, I think, is not healthy for our democracy, is not healthy for Uganda. I don't want to name parties, but people who follow the politics know the political parties which are extremist. You find we have put an arrangement where we say political parties which have representation in parliament have a platform called iPod where they can raise issues. But because NRM and President Museveni are there, some parties say, no, we cannot be there. So what kind of democracy is that? NRM talks to UPC, to DP, and say, yes, we are all trying to see how to build a better Uganda. Can we work together? When DP agrees, then the other opposition parties say, no, 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 these are traitors and so forth. So I think he was making a general commentary towards that. And like he made reference to the 2020 campaigns here. We saw where groups emerged trying to harass those who subscribe to NRM It is my right to belong to NRM. It is your right to be in NUP or FDC or DP. So why would you want to beat me up because I'm putting on a yellow? So the president was condemning this kind of impunity. That yes, we are in a multi-party dispensation. People have freedom of association. You can belong to a political party of your choice, but respect the other who has gone into another political party. But also he cautioned the security that he shall also not entertain impunity on the side of security when he referred to the killing of one zebra.
Zabron.
No, zebra.
Zebra.
Zabron was the Bush story where somebody under drunkenness killed somebody, and then he was saying General Jim Wezi, as a lawyer, was saying it is the alcohol in him. But there was another case of zebra who was saying who was in the hands of security agents and he died in a manner which is unfathomable. So the president was right to condemn impunity, but I think what has been agitating the public is probably in some instances the manner the people were being arrested. And my view would be, if arrests are to be carried out, let them be done in accordance with the law. And the law says, identify yourself, allow the person to access his or her lawyers, the family, arrest the person and produce him or her in court within 48 hours. Otherwise, nobody is above the law. If I break the law, even as a government minister, I am not above the law. I can be arrested as long as it is done legally and procedurally correct. I think that's what probably sometimes brings agitation in the public. And therefore, going forward, I think we need decency in our politics. As we go into multi-party politics, let's keep respect for each other. But whoever offends the law, whether you're a leader of a political party or a big figure, like we have argued here, people say, why is Dr. Besigye in prison? Yeah, Dr. Besigye is not above the law. If the state suspects that he has breached some rules, he has broken the law, then you can't say because he's a big opposition figure, then he should be left. That would be impunity. What would worry is if he was arrested and we don't know where he is, like it was happening in the past. You disagree with the government and you disappear. But I think the point the president was making, he said, yes, there may be people who are being arrested, but the difference between the current regime and those regimes you are referring to, BZMU, is that when they are arrested, they are arraigned before the courts of law, and then they are able to defend themselves through a judicial process. And that's the rule of law. That's the rule of law. So I applaud the president that when there was that discomfort in the public, he was able to come and clarify and assure the public that no, it's not true that the country is gravitating into the past, And it is the responsibility of all of us to ensure that we play clean politics, there is hygiene in our political environment going forward. And he addressed other issues of trade order. He addressed the issue of the environment. He urged the population to participate in LC elections and so forth.
We're going to come to those in a bit.
Yes.
But he also mentioned and talked about the NRA. He talked about the battalions, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 11th, 13th, all the way, and said some of the commanders passed away. But he also went on to say there are career lists within the cadres of the NRM. He said there are opportunities there. Do you as the NRM have a void of cadres to be able to take on this mandate to support the president in this vision of the country, say Project Uganda?
Yes, he made that point that many of the cadres who were in the bush and came as part of the team which took over the country have died. And I think some to HIV and AIDS and many other causes of natural death. And he was explaining how part of the young people in the army joined the army to fill that gap. Of course, eventually NRA transitioned into the movement and transitioned to NRM as a political party. And building a cadreship is a continuous process. We are definitely there in NRM, and we have very many. But of course, recruitment and building cadreship cannot end. You can't say, yes, we have enough cadres, we stop here. It's a continuous process. Like the many young people in the country, we continue to mobilize them to join NRM so that NRM as a party remains a very big force that can provide leadership and guidance to the country. So basically there was nothing wrong with what he was raised, but he was just reminding us that some of those who had the ideas, who knew the origin of NRM, those who started with him, especially the army young people, they died, and they had to be replaced by a patriotic team that trained in the army, and for them they never participated in the bush, and maybe for them they are university graduates, they have gone to school, so that transition also within the armed forces should be appreciated. That transition within the army from the bush to the present day, it was clarifying, it has to be addressed. But again, emphasizing the need for all of us to appreciate the ideological foundations of NRM as a mass organization.
Thank you. Let me bring in Professor Walunyiwa. Professor, as an economist, especially looking at how informal our economy is, especially having that the biggest part of the economy is informal, when you look at this trade order, does it make sense?
Well, of course, first of all, I want to acknowledge my colleagues. Thank you for being here, and thank you for inviting me here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Our boss now in the party.
Congratulations.
I appreciate that.
And being my professor, I feel protected.
In NRM.
No, we have a special relationship. Yes.
Please let's give an opportunity to Professor Walunyiwa before we digress to the second member.
Yeah. Now, of course, the Uganda economy, since the decentralization policies started, there was an effort to see development coming from below. When you look at China, what China did was they identified specific things that are unique to areas, and they did the planning to develop those commodities and the subsequent sale. Now, what has happened in this country is that the level of entrepreneurship is very low, primarily because of the level of education, of the people who are participating in it, and the amount of capital that they have. Because they don't have access to these wonderful ideas which involve technology, and they don't have access to finance, they end up on the street. But what is amazing, I don't know the right word, is that government has built markets and the people are not there. There are many markets around the country. They've been built, they have very nice markets, and the people prefer the street. So you need to get into the psychology of the buyers to find out why should the buyer prefer to buy on the street rather than go to the market. And of course, it's a two-way thing, that there is the seller who is trying to find the street because he or she is attracting that person who is passing around. And, you know, as you indicated, they are not paying, I think one was indicating they are not paying any taxes, so they have their wares there. And I think it's a culture, our culture, that that is where we buy. I mean, you're going to find people buying in these mobile markets which move from here, from various places, and they are also on the street. So I think it's an issue of transformation in the minds of both the buyer and the seller, that go to a place where you have a fixed market and you buy goods. And before these people get to better entrepreneurial ideas with sufficient finance, they will still stay on the street. Yeah. So it's not going to be easy. For instance, many people were removed from these illegal structures. I was trying to buy a desk somewhere in Iganga, and I went to the old place where I used to see the furniture people, and they're no longer there. So I asked where are these people, and somebody said, well, some people are trying to reorganize themselves. Now, this is where the local administration has a major role to play in terms of assisting the local business community to find locations where they can buy and sell goods. You know, otherwise, they're not doing anything as far as I'm concerned.
And I like you talk about the psychology, but allow me bring in the Right Honourable Justin Lumumba as we come to the top of the hour. Honourable, what informed these decisions? We appreciate it, we see the markets, but what, minus the taxes, minus the registration, he has talked about the psychology of the buyers, what informed this decision, minus those three things, to be able to be implemented? And what impact have you seen since the 19th of February to date, when it was communicated?
You know, we had issues to do with the COVID. And you see, the body contact is a problem, spreading it. Also have issues of Ebola that you see we are about to come out of. And we have issues of being organized as a country, because we are supposed to attract tourists. We should be organized. So it is not only those, but the issues I've mentioned outside the three I've talked about. So since then to date, I know there are people who are so bitter because their buildings were broken down, especially outside Kampala. You saw in our small towns of Bujiri, Moroto, where you saw they were breaking down those. One, even in some of those areas, they have the USMID project, this one which is for the urban areas, and they added on in the communities where we have refugees, where they have to come, government got a loan from World Bank. They are going to tarmac these roads in like they did in the other municipalities, and they have lights. Look at Gulu, look at Hoima, look at Busia. Now they are taking on also these new towns also to benefit from that. Moroto, Bujiri, Iganga, and the refugee areas, especially in West Nile, in Ajumani, in Moyo, but also in Isinjiro. Those are the component of the areas with the refugees and the refugee hosting communities. So we all need clean cities. We want cities which are well lit, and once we have lights on the street, that's also a security issue. It solves the insecurity, and people in the slums have been complaining that they want lights. They want lights. So equally, there is that component. So you're saying, what have we seen? Yes, there is order. Just go and look at Lumu Street. When you go to Lumu Street, you are free to walk, and the people are freely moving. Yes, they are crowded in the shops, but the trees are out there to offer them good oxygen as they move around. There is freshness you see, and once you move in an area and you feel it's fresh, that means the oxygen content is high. So people who are working in those areas are getting good supply of oxygen to their brains. The doctor can explain that further. So there is neatness, there is cleanliness. It didn't only stop even at removing people from the streets and breaking down those structures that were in the road reserves. It also went ahead to organize people, and also some people have gone back to the markets to make us organized in our trade, in our businesses, and that's why it's called the trade order.
Lastly, before we take a break, we've seen government directives like this where there was speed governors in cars, it died. We saw seat belts being enforced, it died. At what point do we wait for it to die? Because enforcement is a whole different animal from a directive.
The president said this is Chisanja, no sleep. So no sleep didn't mean anything else. It meant everything, including enforcement. We have been so poor on issues to do with enforcement, And even when enforcement is done, we always have issues to do with sustainability. But this time, for anybody who is in charge, he promised us that you don't do your work, he will sack you and bring, because there are so many people who want to do that work. So people in different sectors are waking up to make sure they are not the first guinea pigs for this in this Chisanja.
Thank you. Yes.
It was not die of childhood mortality. No.
I think the point here is, are we ready for a law? I mean, for instance, recently there was, I think, a law which said you have to get a plan to construct a house.
Yes.
Now, the majority of the houses in this country are grass-thatched. So when we enact a law like that, are we ready to implement it? Have we, for instance, why didn't we say the urban areas, but the laws are there, in the urban areas you cannot construct a house without a plan, you cannot enter a house without approval to enter it. I mean, that is possible in urban areas. But when there is a law which is unenforceable, then it won't make sense.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to come back to you gentlemen. Let's first read some messages here and take the break and come back to the trade order. I appreciate Minister Justine's review about the human rights, and I suggest that she talks about the human rights, not the NRM human rights only. Interesting there. Okay. Council Muchunguzi Lawrence says the president talked about comrades who died, and he had no choice other than to talk to Commander Muhoozi to mobilize his fellow youth to start looking after the country. If I recall, this was in 1996-97. So our team has been watching corruption officials from 96. Okay, interesting. Someone says, good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the show. The problem in our country is that there are some people in the top offices who think they are untouchable. The government will not change. They do what they want to ensure that the lust for power is evident. We need a mindset change. That's how we shall move forward. Secondly, the institutions are not independent. The president himself said justice can only be determined by himself. The judges and the judiciary at large have nothing to do about it. Lastly but not least, tell the Honorable Mbide, politics follows the law, but politics determines the law. Marxism says the prevailing circumstances determine the law that should be. This is Opira from Soroti. Finally, this is Ashraf from Koboko. He says, I appreciate the Honorable Mbide's insightful balance submission. In my view, politics creates the law, but the law must always govern politics. Once enacted, the law should protect every Ugandan, equally regardless of the political affiliation or social status. Government deserves the credit for promoting peace, infrastructure, programs like PDM. However, their achievements will have greater meaning when they are matched with the unwavering respect for human rights, equal justice, and the rule of law. This is the foundation of strong democracy and lasting national transformation. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at the trade order, the wetlands, but also wrap it up with corruption there. This and more after this break.
MTN voice bundle. Ay. Load. Hey. Hello, Mama. Hey, it is me, your son, Opio. Hey, now, Mama, listen to me. MTN has the offer. Yes, it has the offer. You load from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Now, they have free MTN to MTN minutes. And those minutes are there all day. So you load, you'll thank me later. Mama.
Load an MTN voice bundle between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and get 3 free MTN to MTN minutes valid all day. Dial *100 *21# and get your free minutes bully daily. Free your fire with free minutes from MTN. Together, our connection is unstoppable. MTN.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project. That answers somebody's question.
The Front Bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. The conversation is diverse here, but those are conversations for when we're off air. Timothy Nyangoso is my name. I'm joined by Honorable Rose Obinga. I'm also joined by Honorable John. I'm joined by Honorable Mbide, Professor Walunywa, the Right Honorable Justine, Honorable Dr. Baryomunsi, and we're discussing the President's speech, especially in relation to the trade order, the wetlands, corruption, but also the human rights and justice in there. We'll be ending the tail end of this show talking about trade order now, the wetland, and then we'll end it with corruption there. Let me read two messages, and then I'll be joining the Honorable Mbide. Francis from Tareja says, I'm in agreement, the Honorable Mbide, 100%. Now we are the grassroots people, noticing that some people are not placed before the law, but when they are on the wrong side of it, okay? Good evening, fellow Ugandans. I want to ask the following questions. Why is it hard for some complainants who won the cases but being not given court believes? Okay, quite ambiguous there. Why are cases of land wrangles common in the communities and court cannot even end them or finish the last steps there? Why some accused people are being denied bail or bond? This is Rashid, a youth leader there. Honorable Mbide, I know you will respond to these, but let's go to the trade order. What legal mandate does this trade order have? What legal standing is it on right now?
First of all, if anybody wants to understand this legal order, you need to give yourself time to even look at colonial laws. In the 1700s, it was commenced by Lugard in Zambia. Here, you need to look at the laws on formalization of the economy and urbanization. Then you will understand that generally what is the intent and purpose before you even go to the effect, both micro and macro. Now, I can look at several countries that have adopted the same because they are all adhering to instances of International Labour Organization under the agenda of decent work. You see, this is intended to provide decent work to those involved in an informal economy. You see, formalization of their decent work, while, of course, respecting the urbanization policies of countries. It is being arranged. Here in Uganda, what we need to look at, we have got the micro effect of formalization of business and work. But the micro effect that is urgently facing those that were otherwise involved in the informal trade, that needs to be addressed in tandem. So several countries, when you look at Ghana, Tanzania, and South Africa, they are providing a zoning entity. There must be an answer in terms of zoning. So it begins with an investment by government into the trade process itself, which allows for the transitional process by the otherwise informal traders. Because merely banning it subtends an effect, illogically, that is generally poverty-oriented. You see, government is, because now you are subjecting people that have been under the principle of quantitative easing and other principles where government generally puts finances in the pockets of the population to evolve at macro level the volume of transactions by PDF, Myoga. Now the recipients of the same have been engaged in informalities of trade. If by stealth, without formal arrangements for a way forward, they are removed from their areas of operation. Now, the country is going to face a lot of issues. One, of course, poverty levels will spring up. Two, of course, it will disorient government priority in terms of course, commercialization of all businesses in Uganda. Three, you will not enjoy the formalization procedure because the policy has not included the zoning, and government needs itself to invest in the creation of those markets. Then, obviously, that now requires desensitization to now account for what Professor Balunya said, that some markets are created and vendors don't go there. Now, there is a subject of how do you facilitate the move? Because that is the only way you will again enjoy the bottom-up economic growth and development. So, in my opinion, I think government needs to also strengthen, as quickly as practicable, the idea of answering the immediate questions that arise during the immediate implementation of the trade order. So they must move in tandem. If there was a study that had been conducted before, I don't know, probably they should have arrived at a method that first of all establishes stealth implementation of the trade order, while at the same time simultaneously establishing a way forward for those that have lost work in the informal agenda. So, in my opinion, I think government needs to look at it. If it stops it for a moment, look at the policy, look at the answer to the immediate problems faced by the informal traders that are immediate. They are just immediate, but they can be addressed. We are now looking forward to, of course, the economists tell you that the oil money cannot be kept in Uganda because it can crash the economy. Now, that money can come in terms of course, supportive endeavors to uplift the trade order economy in terms of machinery. Because for me, I am looking at how government, like Norway did in 1965 at the discovery of oil, they decided we must now engage this country into what we call a social, democratic, or equal opportunities for all economy. Now, Uganda needs to also adopt the same. We find a way of how we can provide equal opportunity, both to the transiting traders that were informal, and also the substantive formal traders, whose also problem we are seeking to solve under the trade order. Otherwise, the policy is good. It has been tested everywhere. It only needs, I think, government to look at it in such a way that both sides are handled at the same level, almost at the same speed.
You mentioned zoning. When you mention zoning, we are basically working in food stuff around the...
Yes, by the way, when you talk of foodstuffs, me, I get angry. You know, when you look at supermarkets where that are actually filled by fruits, generally the whole food sector that is imported. For me, I am looking at the supermarkets that are actually owned by South Africans. Now, why don't we look at what happened in South Africa when Walmart wanted to buy into Massmart? People rioted. You cannot allow foreign direct investment in the food sector. Now, that must be an indigenous-based sector. So, me, I'm looking at zoning in terms of the trade type, zoning in terms of involvement and capacity building, zoning in terms of sensitization, zoning in terms, because now, the informal traders certainly don't even know what bookkeeping means. I was in Dubai some time ago, and one prince was informing me. Actually, he was teaching me how important it is to me, as a businessman, to comply with the tax payments. I was even laughing at him. How important can it? We are looking for ways of to me and told me that even bookkeeping is one of the advantages that you are going to enjoy in terms of your business if you are to comply with the tax payment. And bookkeeping certainly now confirms that your business will flourish. You'll be accountable. You will stop spending money from your socks. It is now going to be expenditure approach, profit and loss, and you'll definitely know whether you are progressive or the contrary. So in Uganda, sensitization is equally key. If you are engaging the bottom-up principle, who is at the bottom? What level of business education does the person at the bottom have? What degree of compliance in terms of business models does that person have? Has that person had access, the access we have had before professors? Those fellows have not had it. Of course, we have not excelled as the best businessmen, but it is because those that are not aware of what we know, employers, in order for them to flourish. But I am looking at a situation where we need, I think, the bottom-up approach is more expensive than government is looking at it.
Thank you. Honorable John, let's get to the realities of this. It's a very informal economy. It's hand to mouth. These people are selling groceries, from tomatoes to onions to fish. If you are up in Gulu, you're seeing people with, greens on the side of the road. And this is a business of 50,000, 100,000, and we have city councils pushing them away. The small makeshift mobile money here. What impact do you see with this trade order, especially if, yes, it has created the order we desire, but what impact happens to the livelihoods of these people that have been moved away?
I think it's about putting our priorities right. Number one, it is without a doubt that the order we are talking about has progressively been created in these different urban centers after the implementation of this trade order. There are a few areas which are still lacking. I was in Gulu City yesterday, and I was by the roadside in the evening. There were all manner of fruits, vegetables. Then what would be the parking yard was also full of people selling their merchandise around. But inside the bucket, which was constructed at billions of shillings, there was literally no one, because in the evening people move out and come back on the streets. The same people, if I would take you back to the days of COVID, there were so many businesses around the city, and when COVID came, most of those businesses left the big malls in the city. Actually, if you went through some of the shopping malls around 2021, many of them were literally empty. But most of those people did not actually quit the businesses. They just later realized that actually it was more profitable and more business manageable for someone with small capital who was actually working for the rent of Chirumira Towers to go and establish a business in Ichira, in Chisasi, in Kalerwe, and in Kawempe areas. So you realize that after COVID, most of the businesses in those outskirts started flourishing than they were before. And as a result, we have very big, not very big, but mid-sized shopping, mini shopping malls that have evolved in those respective centers, or in the suburbs of Kampala. The way they were 5 years ago is not the way they are now. That business came because people realized that actually, instead of paying 2 million shillings on Chirumira Towers, you can go and pay 1 million shillings in Ichira and put the same business and make more profit. So if we set our priorities right, the trade order is one of the best things that have happened to this country. The people we are talking about, I think we are talking about totally different classes of people that the Honorable Mbide keeps referring to. You go to Kamuli, which I represent, there are so many trading centers which had become a mess. If you go now, different places have been gazetted for the people who are operating on the streets to go and do their merchandise from those respective places. So the order has been created. The markets that had been built at billions of shillings are starting to fill up because the people are moving away from the streets. You go downtown Kampala, like the Right Honorable Justin alluded to. Every evening, KCC was grappling with the garbage that had been littered, and a very small percentage of it will be collected from the streets. Eventually, it will end up in the channels that take water, block the water, and then the flooding continues. and the cholera comes time and again, there is no way we shall look at an organized business-oriented city without order. There is no way the urban centers in the respective outskirts of Kampala will grow when there is totally no sanity. So I, for one, and with a lot of critical observation, have actually come to love the outcome of this trade order.
But Honorable John, order at what cost? Because you're giving us the beautiful picture, but at what cost? You remember these are low-income earning people.
Every development that comes in an area, if it is to be sustainable, must come at a cost. That's a point we must all appreciate. It's unfortunate that they are victims at the time, but this is actually what will create another class of serious business people outside the small class that has been affected now. The example I have given you, people thought you would have to come to Kololo, Nakasero, and then put your business there. But I don't know when you were last. I live the other side of town. If you walk through Ntinda, all those very dilapidated residential houses that were touching the tarmac have been broken down, and what has been put are actually shopping malls, housing big businesses and shops which are growing. When Ntinda gets assemblies of getting full and expensive to survive on, Chiwatule picks up, Chira picks up, Bulindo picks up. So the cycle is growing, the town is expanding. That is actually the impact of the trade order that we are looking at today.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Rose, and he mentioned Gulu City and where the market is situated. But when you're moving through Gulu, you need something very nearby to be able to get and go away. The question to you is, when you see these people, down to earth, Muntuwa Wansi, that are trying to make ends meet and being pushed with the little they have, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, thank you. You know, these trade orders should have come yesterday, not even today. I want to talk about Arua City and Gulu City. First of all, movement is very difficult. And I want to say that these people you see by the roadside are actually people from inside, those who have their businesses in the markets, and then they pick it and come to stage by the roadside. I don't want to pick anything by chance by the roadside. First of all, what you're picking by the roadside is a contaminated food. There's dust, there's what, movement is very difficult. There's nowhere you can step around the hospital, a rural referral hospital. You are rushing with the patient in, there is nowhere you are passing. You have to negotiate with people who are illegally placing themselves there. Honestly, if we love Uganda as Ugandans, we needed this yesterday. We need to clean up our city. We need clean environment. We need to build our city. We need to build our markets. We need to build ourselves in a very organized way.
But what drives, because when I look at the market here in Kasubi, it used to be by the roadside. It was pushed in a corner, hard to reach. When you look at the market in Gulu City, it is right out of the city in the corner that side. Very few, there's no order inside there for you to be able to find what you want inside there. Really, are we creating order?
Not everything should be by the roadside. There must be designated places where you should find specific things. I want to tell you I'm one of the most happiest people to see this trade order come to pass.
Okay. Honorable Chris, let me come to you. Why are there terms of reference of implementing this trade order? Because in some places you're seeing it very high-handed. Some places you're seeing that they have left Honorable Bidde's business standing and then they have crushed mine. What is the terms of implementing this trade order?
Well, let me start by answering the previous questions. You have asked whether this trade order, is it hinged on a law, or first of all, why do governments exist? Governments exist to create order in society so that we don't just live like my people would say anyhow. It's not English, but people use that slang. So government is there to create order so that we live in an orderly society. In urban studies, there is what they call livability of a city or a town. is the town livable? If you look at Kampala the way it was, many people had like given up going downtown in Kampala. Because you go there, the pickpockets will take whatever you have, even reaching where you are going was very difficult. And the question would be, is that the environment, the situation we would want? I'm sure a majority of Ugandans would say no. So there are laws which are in place. There is the Trade Licensing Act, which clearly defines how trade should be done. Even hawkers, that law provides for a hawker's license. Even section 16 of that law, these hawkers who hawk must have a license issued by an authority. There is the Markets Act, which defines how markets must be run. For instance, there's a section which says if a store is not occupied for some period, it can be relocated to somebody else. The Local Government Act, the Physical Planning Act, and many other laws. So this trade order is backed by existing laws. And the terms of reference, yes, those flouting the law should be removed. Maybe we have to talk to the enforcers to be humane, not to explain, first of all, to the people who are being affected, and they are supposed to be relocated to other places. Otherwise, yes, it is disruptive, especially to those who are in the business of hawking and vending on the streets, but that can't be something we should promote. Because you find somebody has a shop, is paying trading fees and license fees, and then somebody comes and puts his merchandise in the front. Really, and this person is paying taxes and his business just dies. In Busega, for us who ply the western route, vendors had begun in evenings selling their merchandise on the roads. You would reach there and you have nowhere to pass. On the tarmac road, they have shoes or the clothes, second-hand things, and so forth and so forth. Yes, they have to survive, but there must be order. I think what would be important is that if they are removed from that space, if we can create a space where they can sell their merchandise in an organized way. So we would want to appeal to Ugandans that this trade order is not brought in bad faith. I mean, if you have constructed a road and said this is a road reserve, what does it mean? It means that space is for government, and there is a reason why it is left as a road reserve. Why do you come and construct a house there when you know it's not your land, it's government land? So tomorrow, if government says we want to expand this road, like Honorable Justine was saying, we have this UCMID which is now expanding to include the cities. If we have come to expand the road, and we say, no, you are in a road reserve, there you should not cry, because many of those even come and construct in the road reserves when they know it is illegal. So probably the concerns the public is raising, that they need sensitization, they need to be educated about this trade order, and the people enforcing should be humane, tell people to remove their merchandise. But some people are stubborn. They give you 2 or 3 months to remove your things from a building, they refuse. And that forces the enforcers to come and put down the building. So it could be done much more decently, but something very positive for the country. Because we need the order, we need the cleanliness. If you look at the public health point of view, yes, we need food, we need to access food. But if you see the food vendors, the environment in which they are operating, this is not good for our health. And therefore, yes, while we want our people to trade, to survive, to get the money, but also from the health standpoint, we must also protect Ugandans by advising you to prepare and sell your food in a decent place which doesn't endanger the lives of the population. So we shall continue to educate the masses that the government means well for Ugandans. It is not brought in bad faith. Some people say, oh, government has been voted, then the first thing they are doing. No, it's not that we are bringing it after being voted, but every person, including those very people who are being evicted, they need an orderly space where to trade and where to live. You see, the traffic jam sometimes they cause. The town is hawking things, and they cause accidents and all these things. So the government is there to solve some of those challenges. They may be painful, yes, but the hawkers, the vendors should be relocated to other organized spaces and also create space for those other traders in front of whose shops sometimes these vendors and hawkers, they obstruct the buyers and then the shops are not selling.
If you've been following the stories in the media, there's a bit of spike in crime. Is that a concern for you for national security?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the kind of congestion which was the Kampala, if I use Kampala as an example, was also partly facilitating the crime. And now, recently, I moved downtown and reached this mall near Nakivubo, and I had not been there for the last like 15 years. But I was able to move and reach there. But in the past, before this trade order, you could move, you could not reach your destination before somebody has pickpocketed you, or your phone has been snatched, or the ladies who carry bags, your bag has been snatched. So one of the benefits of the trade order is that also it's going to minimize and reduce on the crime, the urban crime. But probably your point is that we should not just evict them and tell them to go away. We should organize space for them, those who have been evicted from the streets. We should organize the space for them which is decent, where they can also earn a living. Because otherwise, if you say leave the streets and go away, then they can convert into thieves and petty thieves, and then the crime also increases. So that has to be handled.
Lastly, Professor Balunywa, how can we do this better? Especially, Honorable Chris mentioned, sensitization. How can we do it better that this population that is big can be salvaged, that it builds the country that we all desire?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, we need to appreciate that small and micro enterprises constitute approximately 90% of our businesses. And even globally, I think about 95%. So if that's where we're starting from, we need to be able to understand how do these locate. Now, but the question we need to ask ourselves is, how did we get there? I mean, me looking back at Room Street many years back, they were not there. How did these people get onto the street? These are weaknesses in implementation, corruption. That people come on the street and you take kid dog and you leave them there. And the habit, becomes a practice. So it's unfortunate that we got there because of corruption, most likely. The enforcers didn't do their job. And so realizing that a large percentage of our people are in small and micro enterprises, because of the nature of our society, we should therefore be able to plan better. Are we planning our towns? Some mayor came to me recently asking me for some ideas about how to plan their town. And I told him it's available online. Go online and you Google and say, how do I plan a town? It's there. And first of all, it is streets and making sure you gazette where to build, where to put sports centers. This evening I came in through Kororo, and because we've not planned, there's a party somewhere and the line of cars, occupy the whole street because we've not planned. So I think it's very important that we plan for the future of these businesses. And if we plan for them, then, and we enforce the law, because that's the biggest weakness we have. We don't enforce the law, and we have people staying in there. And then when you send them away, they'll say you're bad. So we are blaming government because a few people in government have not done their job of ensuring that people are not there. But to me, I think it's about planning for the different types of businesses in the country. Go to the new towns. Do they have an industrial area? Do they have a commercial area? Do they have an entertainment area? I mean, all these are very important. Do they have markets? Because the nature of our businesses is markets. So if they're not part of the planning of urban areas, we end up having a huge slum in all our towns.
Thank you. Right Honorable Justin Lumumba, the President was emphatic, and he has always been emphatic about wetlands. He has spoken about removing people from wetlands. They need to be used for fish farming there. And also to give NEMA their flowers. We've come from 9% cover to now about 13%. But why is it being implemented selectively? They will leave someone's house because the person is big. They'll demolish a house of someone else. People who have lived in this wetland that is near the bypass for over 25 years, why is it being implemented selectively?
I remember the President clearly said that he wants people out of the wetlands except those in the wetlands in Busoga, in Bukedi, and Chigezi. Those he's bringing a fund that will help them to get an alternative, because originally they were not in the wetlands, but government introduced crops and encouraged them to go. That encouraged them to go to the wetlands. Like I come from Bujiri. When the government brought the Chinese to come and establish Chibimba Dam, Chibimba rice scheme, those are the ones who taught us how to go to plant rice in the swamps. Rice wasn't part of our crops. So the swamps used to be left. All that we were doing was to get the papyrus, to make the mats, to make the crafts like the baskets, and also using them for roofing some of the grass thatched houses, and more or less the same also to Chigezi. So when you say selective, he has been so consistent on that, because government brought a policy and facilitated us to go to the wetlands. So it is government that must offer us alternatives to make us get out of the wetlands, not just wake up and say, please go. But now, when it comes to issues to do with NEMA, in some of these areas, it is NEMA itself, but also it's also our responsibility, we as leaders, but also as people in the particular area. Because if you observe, we are into an era of climate change. We are really facing the wrath of climate. If it is drought, it is too hot than ever before. And also the humidity is also going up, which wasn't the case here in Uganda when we were young. The destruction of the swamps has destroyed the wetlands around, especially now when you look at Lake Victoria. The other day, Honorable Tafile, as a new minister in charge of wetlands, and the water bodies were saying, they've told me Lake Victoria is smelling. And I said, so it is your work to clean it. He said, how am I going to stop it from smelling? So we started telling him the beauty of it, that you are even in charge of the wetlands. So you are supposed to make sure you reinstate all the wetlands around Lake Victoria. Those who are digging up to the lake should stop. You should now reinstate the one of the 10 meters and the 50 meters, those for the river and the lake. And he was saying, how right and do it in the whole country? And I was telling him, it is because the president, so it is you who can manage. Yes. So, but the selective way of approaching or enforcing the law is bad and should stop. And the minister who is Honorable Kahindo Tafile, and my colleagues in that ministry, together with the NEMA, and all of us should also stop. Because sometimes you pass an area and you find they are backfilling, and we all pass and go. And these are some of the gaps the president was talking about, that we see things and we don't take action. We don't inform those who are in charge, because there is even environmental police. What are they doing? Actually, it even didn't stop only. The president didn't only stop at the wetlands. He went ahead to talk about even the forests. and said the forests have also been, it was about environment. Forests have also been destroyed, because if you observe, we have been destroying forests, I think at 12% per year, and that is too high. And this has affected our rainfall pattern. Yet, we have not yet established irrigation in everybody's garden who is doing agriculture in the country. And this affects productivity, and it's frustrating to the farmers who are depending on nature to be able to get good harvest. So the issue of the forests, wetlands is all our responsibility. Now, like Mabira, let me give an example. Mabira, what you see, when the NRM came to power, people had really encroached on the forest. But when NRM took leadership, these people were encouraged to leave the forest, and people left. I remember we used to have our garden, my uncle's garden of bananas in Mabira. So we left, and once people leave, these trees, the original trees grow. But as we talk now, Mabira has been destroyed when we are watching. So these are some of the gaps the president was talking about. And he ended it by telling the people who are, he said the Ministry of Environment and the local governments must explain. Government has done its part, but have also made mistakes. Let me give an example. In Mabira itself, we in the government gave a town council in Mabira, and we passed it. We in the government, what did that mean? Town councils are given to areas where there are people to settle, and it is part of the process of growing that area into an urban area. But we didn't follow the procedure that we are supposed to follow if we are to take that according to international standards. If we are to take a town council into a forest, it would mean, like you see when you're above Johannesburg, you see a very beautiful forest. Before this, when you land that, you see the houses under those trees. So maybe we would have taken on such, but we didn't do that. So all of us are to blame, including myself. But we should not do selectively, except for those areas of Busoga, Bukeda, and what. But government we should allocate money so that the alternatives are given, especially now leaving the wetlands and going for better crops that will give us more money than what the little rice we are growing in the wetlands. The destruction is not commensurate to the benefit that the economic benefit we are getting out of this. Now, for the case of Busoga, for the areas of Namayingo, Bujiri, Mayuge, and Iganga, government has introduced the growing of palm oil, the very palm oil which is grown in Kalangala, and also now in Buvuma, has been introduced in that area as an effort for us to leave the wetlands and concentrate on growing the palm oil in the right places, so that we are able even to get more money than the money we are getting from the rice. Let me give an example. Palm oil takes 4 years to begin harvesting. But when you begin harvesting, you harvest every month. As we talk now, you get 500,000 per acre for the next per acre per month, and you harvest for the next 25 years minimally, provided there is good rainfall pattern and you are applying fertilizers or manure, and you harvest for 25 years to 30 years. Which is, as we talk now, there is no crop which is yet to that value. Because even coffee, you harvest twice a year. But for palm oil, you harvest every month.
Thank you. Honorable Mbide, and we all agree here that the trade order is a good idea. We all agree the implementation to reclaim the wetlands is a good idea. But there is the politics. How do we insulate such brilliant ideas against politics that you had mentioned earlier?
Yes, by just looking at two major things that can be actually the effect, the resultant effect of the implementation of the said trade order. One of them is the debt spiral effect, the kind of informal debts that will accrue these traders out of the stealth implementation of the procedure. Then, if government has got a process of answering that question of debt spirals from their informal debts, the Shylocks, and the capital destruction, informal capital destruction of these people, because they will feed on it. Let government tell me how they intend to address that. I can assure you this can be easily implemented. That is number one. Now, this discussion, I have first this discussion of wetlands, where NEMA gives clarifications that you have got to construct almost 200 meters away from water. I don't know the age, how old the managers of NEMA, how old they are. But I wanted them to discuss this with the purview of the construction processes and procedures in Venice, in Makoko, Lagos, in Amsterdam, where buildings are constructed on water. I want to know the difference between a building constructed on water in Amsterdam and this building you do not want me to construct on water. When we were studying in primary school, it was obviously known that part of the means of transport includes water transport. I have seen shops in Amsterdam where somebody moves by boat from one shop to another. Now, I want them to tell me, either they are operating under stale proficiency in terms of management of wetlands, and they need themselves now for substantial upgrade in terms of sensitization, or there is something we must look at. Number two, I know that when you look at the manufacturing sector in Uganda, it has been growing between 4.5 to almost 5. The economist will know better than I do. And this is definitely buttressed in former wetlands. Now, me, I want to understand what is the ratio of estoppel of wetland usage to what will happen to our economy. Because now our economy has supplanted all the former imports from Kenya in terms of kimbo, ghee, all the peremptory imports that used to come from Kenya are now produced here and we are exporting. The country has created 4 outlets. There is an outlet through Djibouti by the Desu Authority. There is an outlet through Mombasa, an outlet through Dar es Salaam, and an outlet that will eventually culminate into the construction of roads to the Atlantic through DRC. While we are trying to manage the multiplication of our industrial sector, who is working with NEMA to dismiss the industrial sector simply because some trees want to grow? Now let me tell you, the objects for which we are looking at the wetlands, and I want to understand it properly, is the subject of the Ramsar Convention in 1988. This was not our own convention. But I want to know, when you pass the sovereignty which act is this? The Protection of Sovereignty Act. What happens to the over and heightened implementation of a foreign guideline that was signed in 1988 here? I thought this would be a subject of review. I succinctly do not believe there is an effect on construction to the environment once the environmental impact assessment has been done. That is my view. That is my leadership view, and NEMA needs to teach me what is different between Uganda, Venice, Amsterdam, Nigeria, Lagos, where buildings are constructed on water for purposes of exploiting water transport.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Honorable John, the population is growing. The projections by 2030 seem to be north of 50 million Ugandans. How do we balance the population boom with a piece of land that is not growing? If we have, let's put an example, 20.4 million hectares of land, and yet we have 46 million Ugandans, that means everyone is living on about 0.4 hectares. How do we balance that?
The question is living on, but for what activities? What we all don't dispute is the fact that
and I still again differ from the Honorable Mide, the fact that we need to protect the wetlands. The reference the Honorable Justin made about Otafire, commenting that it's smelling, there is an odor being emitted from around the water bodies, and you know Kampala is around Lake Victoria, so which will culminate into another maybe health challenge. I think let's focus mainly on, if we are to go by what is in existence, and if we are not to be too theoretical on this, we all agree that we need to protect some wetlands, because the reason why you have the flooding in Kampala, for example, is because you've blocked the water access to Lubigi, and from Lubigi it's going to lead it to Lake Wamala, and then from Lake Wamala maybe to find its way to River Nile, and then it continues to Egypt. You cannot block water from movement. So if we are to have this cleaning and also emptying, you need clarity of movement of water through the wetlands by way of purification. The million-dollar question is, and I think the Right Honourable Justin as Minister for National Guidance should really give serious priority on how much impact have the local governments created in terms of giving governance to this country. Because if we go to areas where there is encroachment on the wetlands, for example, everywhere, there is a parish chief, we have, each district by the way has north of 50,000 leaders, if you collect all of them from different groupings. 50,000 councillors, L1 chairpersons, executives, NRM structures, I think even DP has village structures, okay, the good DP at least. I mean, if you go through all these, you will find that there is leadership that must provide answers to some of these very, very small things, like a reporting mechanism. There is someone constructing in a wetland, but the LC1 chairperson doesn't know, the parish chief doesn't know. But a village has a population of about 200 people averagely.
And let me give you a simple example of, I won't mention the area, neither the school, but this man started reclaiming a wetland. He built a school. The LC1, the LC3 came. He sent police to arrest them. They arrested them. So what you're talking about this reclaiming and local authorities, what authority do they have when the Honorable Mbide is busy reclaiming a wetland?
Well, if the LC1 chairperson has reported a matter, maybe it's the LC3 chairperson, and the LC1 feels there hasn't been anything done, all those people know that you go to the office of the RDC. All those people know that you go to the DISO, you go to the DPC. We have operated with these offices. If you find a problem in the office of the RDC, there will be a sane person in the office of the DISO. There can never be only bad apples in every district that are combined. Well, there is a challenge of corruption, big names. Some people have actually used the offices. I had an incident in Chira where I went in my day-to-day life as a legal practitioner, and they are telling me, this house must be broken down by NEMA simply because it's in a wetland. But actually, to interrogate the matter, the person who is a big person on top, just adjacent to this house, they had blocked his view of a very good scenery away, so he wanted the house to be broken down using NEMA. And when I spoke to Dr. Kakos, I said, but is this right? I said, well, let me send my people to actually assess what is on ground. So the reporting mechanism, but what we are looking at is not just about the wetlands. When we talk about the reporting mechanism of this country, we wouldn't be having the challenges we had in the UBOS report, because there were various voices on the UBOS report after the census. We wouldn't be having that problem if we had a mechanism for reporting death and birth from the system that is created. Why do we have 50,000 leaders in a district and we cannot have the simplest of the things like delivery of information? But when someone commits a crime, we can go back to the cameras or use whatever mechanism and even identify, because if you've taken notice, most of the crimes that have been recorded on any video around town, the culprits have been arrested by the security systems. So we can have that, but you cannot see a person constructing a house which is going to take not less than 6 months to construct in a wetland, and we can't stop it. So we just need to improve the methodology of operation as government. And the Honorable Ariomos used to hit on this when we were in the floor of Parliament, the 11th Parliament. Government is like a human body. You have the hand, you have the leg. I mean, you cannot have the legs very perfect, but the hands are imperfect. and then you think you will deliver results. So these are the issues we want to bring maybe back to discussion and ensure that there is functionality of every office that is called an office of governance in this country.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to inform my brother also, particularly on River Nile. If you go to an area called Zamalek in Egypt, it has got constructions on water. They are called hotels. They are very big hotels, but they are like ships. The manner in which they are handling River Nile, you may think they have the source of River Nile, and we don't. It is simply because of the differential manner in which they have approached the environmental method. For me, my view, and I am happy that we have got policymakers here and ministers, we need a substantial review. Let us brainstorm on the review of the environment sector. Let us review the Ramsar Convention. Let us review the substantive laws, because they are archaic, they are a bit old, and we need to review them within the precincts of a country that wants to export industrial goods, as opposed to a country that was operating under the export of raw materials when these agreements were made.
Okay. Honorable John, before I come to Honorable Rose.
The difference with Egypt and most of the countries the Honorable Media is referring to is the way they manage their construction. Not an individual will come and say, I have hired Rose or Bigger to come and construct for me my house. There are companies which must submit approved plans in those particular areas where they're going to put the construction. And there's uniformity. You come to an area, you'll find uniformity of houses. But here, you have John constructing a grass-thatched house closer to where he's fishing from. Then you have Robina constructing a Mabati house closer to the... I mean, it becomes... I have visited landing sites. The Honorable Justin is closer to many islands than any of us. You go to the landing sites where which are more affected by these environmental issues that we are talking about. And it has a semblance of a jungle setting. So the kind of approach that they use in the construction is different, and it speaks to many things. Our land holding system, the way we have approached life from time immemorial. When you man up to 18 years, you have to put up your house by whatever method, so in whichever way. And I mean, if we are to review, it's a very lengthy approach that we must look at from Genesis to Revelation. But as we wait to go into those details, let's manage the manageables. Let's appreciate that we need to protect the wetlands. Let's appreciate that we should have a reporting mechanism of anyone who is breaching the guidelines that are in place.
Thank you. Honorable Rose, the population, the public is growing. But also when they come to things like trade order or the wetland reclamation, we try to push it to government. How do we get the spirit of ownership, that this is our country, we need to do well by it? How does that arise in each and every Ugandan that is in this country?
First of all, I would say Ugandans honestly need to be patriotic. The issue of reclaiming wetlands, in the first place, Rose, I wouldn't think we should be talking about reclaiming wetlands. People should not have tampered with the wetlands at all. And for me, I don't stop on the wetlands. I go to mountains and hills. Must also be planted. If you go to Japan, here in Uganda, you'll find people building on top of the hill. But in Japan, you'll find the whole hill is green up there and people are building at the basement. If my brother, Honorable Mbide, is not aware, I want to say this. This season, almost all farmers lost crops to the climate change. We are battling with what will our people feed on in this coming season, and what will they plant? It's just adamance and like lack of regard by people who go to reclaim wetlands. Around Chambogo, I lost my way. I just said this route can easily take me the other side. I found big lorries ferrying soil to reclaim a place. I stopped there, and I've been in the Committee of Environment. I called. I really stayed for 2 hours calling, trying to get the environmental police to come and see what I'm seeing. Nobody came. And I was just promised that they are coming, they will come. This is unacceptable. If you go to Amsterdam, I take my holiday there very often. If we are talking about constructions on water bodies, honestly, there is diversion of water and use of materials not necessarily reclaiming. But the Ugandan way is very bad. Before even we go for policy review, we know that it's already wrong. It's affecting fish, the aquatic life. This is our country, for Christ's sake. If you don't have enough land in Kampala, I want to say this. Over 70% of refugees hosted by this country that makes Uganda to be the country that hosts the largest refugees in Africa. We still have land in Terego. Come with your buildings, let's go to Terego. You can't construct there. What is the reason of reclaiming land? We have filth on Lake Victoria. I find people, it's so embarrassing, people who park very quality vehicles. They are the ones doing this, not the other poor girl like me, the village girl of Terego doing this. Shame upon us. Shame upon all Ugandans out there who think the best land for construction or for putting their factory is the wetland. It's very wrong. We need the reeds. We need to sieve our water. If we are saying Lake Victoria is smelly, honestly, what pride do you take in this? From a nationalistic point of view, I don't agree with people who are reclaiming land. Whatever iron fist is there, because these are the halves, should be really used on people who are messing with wetlands. And I would say that Ugandans, we should really be considerate to ourselves. We're not doing this to anybody. This is our water. These are our clean waters. So we should take care of them. Before we go to policy, we shouldn't act in a way that, yes, there is no policy, now let me mess it. Whose country? We all have, if you don't have a child, at least you have relatives. Whom are you going to live in this polluted environment? If you see, if you wake up very early, there was a time I spent a night in, is it Golden?
Tulip.
Tulip. I was right up there. I woke up. Oh my God. You find there's a lot of smoke. The place is covered with carbon dioxide. You find it's not safe at all. Who should come and tell you this? I say, Ugandan, you should really revisit your mindset that no, I have a responsibility. It is my role, not only my right, to do the right thing at the right time. I beg everybody, we should protect our environment. Let's move to mountains and hills. Let's not stop with
the wetlands.
Wetlands. We have a big mountain in Terego, and people went and settled there. And they knew I was desperate for votes, and came to me, Rose, how can they take us away from here? They want to evict us. I said, excuse me. If this mountain blows up, we don't know what is underneath. What happens? Is it better for me to bury you, or it's better you leave the mountain? And I think every other leader should not talk for the sake of wanting votes or cheap popularity. We should face realities the way they come.
Thank you. Honorable Mbide, you have a comment before I go to the Honorable Dr. Chris.
The idea of wetlands is both scientific and economic. I was told by economic professors that land as a factor of production carries a price. So a country has a choice to make. That a decimal of land that is the equivalent of $10,000 for development purposes should be reserved for frogs. Now, there must be science accompanying that decision. And for me, I am saying there must be a review. I don't want a situation where we are continuously stratified as the third world that should protect some wetlands, as the alleged first world continues with industrialization in order to continue to colonize us. There must be a debate. I have, throughout my growth, I identified that NRM is actually interested in philosophical debate. There must be a review of the 1988 Romsey Agreement. It must be both scientific and economic. That is the only way Uganda will achieve the development agenda that we have put forward to entertain.
Thank you. Dr. Chris, what are the likely impacts in the future if we keep the way we're going with, no, let me change the question. If we keep letting ourselves get into these wetlands, either through corruption or building, what are the likely impacts to us as a population and as a country?
You see, Honorable Mbide says the wetlands and land are scientific and economic, but I can also add this issue is divine and biblical. If I take you to the Christian Bible, in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 26, 27, 28, that chapter speaks of the story of creation. And when God had completed the process of creation, of course he ended with a human being, he gave two commands. Command number 1, produce and fill the earth. And that's how we are doing it. Although speaking as a medical doctor, we say produce by choice, not by chance, and should have a manageable family size, but people are producing. And that's why there is a population pressure, the population is increasing. But the other command which he gave was, you human being, I have established dominion over whatever I have created and subdue the earth. He didn't say destroy it, he said subdue it. Now, you have the wisdom and the intelligence to manage it through innovation, through technology, and be able to survive. So it is, so what we are doing by destroying the environment, we are now distorting what God created, as per the Bible, what the Bible says. So, it is wrong to attack these wetlands, the river systems, the lakes, the mountains, as Honorable Rose is saying. We should be able to preserve the nature. And Honorable Mbide, we can still industrialize, we can still grow wealth without destroying the environments. The activities which are allowed to be used in wetlands, sustainable use of wetlands and protected areas. For instance, the environmentalists will stop you from growing rice in the wetlands, but you can do fish farming in wetlands in a guided way. Even the construction on rivers, on lakes can be done, but under the guidance of the specialists. What kind of construction materials will you use that does not interfere with the aquatic life and the flow of the river and so forth and so forth. So your question is, what are the likely implications? How will the future look like if we just go destroying and invading the environment? Many consequences, some of which we are already feeling them. The other day I was in the Kanungu and in my village, people were crying over the drought. I think for them, when their son is appointed a minister, they think you have divine powers even for rain. So they were saying, we want some rain. I said, where do I get it from? Because everything has dried, the crops have failed. I said, yes, I am a government minister, but I don't have the power to. But now, miraculously, I told them, okay, God will listen to your cries. The following day it rained. It rained in my place in the Kanungu. But the climatic changes, the pattern is changing. And of course, with our low levels of technology, where our people depend on the rain from God and the sunshine, that is already a challenge, and I'm sure people appreciate it. And the President was very clear on the science that the rain which we get, up to 40%, comes from these wetlands, the swamps and the river systems that we have. And then the other remaining percentage comes from the oceans and the seas. So tampering with what God arranged definitely causes a distortion. In terms of diseases, when you disturb the ecology, the ecosystem, that's when you get even strange diseases turning up. Like now, we are talking of Ebola, and these what they call zoonotic diseases which move from animals to human beings. When you destroy the habitats of these animals where they ordinarily reside, monkeys, cheetah, and so forth, then they invade the settlements. You find, like now, you have destroyed where the monkeys ordinarily live, the forests, and now when you put pressure on them, they now come, start invading your compounds, live in the trees which you have put in the compounds. And that's how you can get these disease spillovers moving from an animal to a human being. So there are all sorts of consequences. And in food scarcity, famine, diseases, all these issues come up. So it is very wrong and very incorrect, and the advice we give the Ugandans out there, the people listening to us, is that the message of government and the scientists that we should protect and preserve the wetlands and the protected areas is correct. You can only use them or invade them, if I call it invasion, under the guidance of those who know how you can sustainably use some of these wetlands. Otherwise, we should take it very serious, because if we, there's a reason why God put rivers, put lakes, put swamps, put mountains. Otherwise, we would have made everything land or everything soil. So to balance the nature, we should preserve what God gave us. And like Honorable Rose was saying, yes, we may be having scarcity of the land, population may be growing, but we have to be innovative. We have to deploy technology. For instance, if we are constructing, let's now construct vertically and go up. Instead of utilizing all the land for settlement, we can now go vertical and save the land for agriculture and for other things. So we need to really tackle this issue very seriously. That's why we have institutions like NEMA and other institutions, and we should take the guidance from these institutions. It is for the good of everybody. When the government appeals that leave the wetlands, they are not harassing you, but they are saying you destroy the swamps around Kampala, then you are destroying Lake Victoria. That's why it smells. And the water we consume in our homes comes from Lake Victoria. So basically you are poisoning yourself at the end of the day. So I think we need... Yes.
On these two facts. One,
yes,
that the countries I cited, that is Venice and of course that city in Italy, I think, yes, and Amsterdam, that have sustainably utilized wetlands, do not have either of those diseases cited here by you. And
are you sure?
Yes, Ebola and that one scientifically really we don't find it in Amsterdam.
I gave those as examples.
But also, Honorable, maybe you can address all at once. But also that countries that have nothing to do with the removal of wetlands by construction of buildings and what, like Congo, incidentally are the ones infested with Ebola. So maybe you can address me. I'm now reasoning as a lawyer. Because
I am a lawyer with little knowledge in science.
Yes. But so I have all the knowledge available.
By the way,
in lagislation.
Yes.
And
by the way, some of you just admire Europe, but Europe has its problems.
Yes.
If you go there and see the heat wave which is hitting Europe now, people are almost running mad because of the heat wave. The pollution that runs in the cities in Europe. So it is not all rosy in Europe. In Europe. When I mentioned Ebola was just an example, but the point I was making that there are diseases which will be occasioned by the destruction we cause in the environment. Because the environment, the wetlands, protect us from very many pathogens. So when you disrupt the way it is constructed, you create a risk of emergence of some of these diseases. If you look at the disease burden in our settings, you will find these non-communicable diseases like cancer, the others are on the rise. Even the communicable diseases which can spread from one person to another are on the rise. And when you dig deep, so that we don't have enough time to go into it, you'll find the destruction of the environment is worsening the disease burden in our communities.
Okay.
So it is
allow
but
me
you are right that there are ways of sustainably
Yes.
using
Yes.
these wetlands and other resources, and we can look at it.
Okay. Let me read some feedback so that I can give you parting shots. Thank you for the show. I am. You don't leave a name. You say you're from Nebi. First, on the 24th of April, Honorable Bahati told the legislators that government is consulting on how to better manage this matter following the concerns raised by religious leaders and traders. We shall have a final meeting at the end of June, so that at the beginning of July we have a refined way of operating. We did apologize to the religious leaders because some people, while carrying out evictions, made reckless statements against various religions. Okay. Secondly, the former speaker, okay, you mentioned the trade order there, thank you. But now, this is Godfrey from Koboko. The trade order is best thing ever to happen to us, and it has improved the Koboko town. Before, we were too many kiosks selling the same things on tarmac. It's commonly known as doing things on the road. I am so happy that it has created this seamless trade in our area and also for South Sudan. A truck lost control and killed 3 people that were sailing beside the road. Okay, thank you for that information. Good evening. I am Mohanji Fred, the former LC5 of Riantonde. The trade order should have started yesterday, but it's never too late to start now. Okay. Good evening, Timothy. How can NEMA ignore a building that is up to the 5th storage, only to come back and break it when it's almost done? This construction has happened. This is Barasa from Munyonyo. Okay, thank you, Barasa. Lastly but not least, good evening, Timothy. Well, I have happened to go downtown on Monday, but I'm assuring you that the hawkers are slowly coming back to the streets. Also, in my small hometown where I live in Chitende, life is back to normal. The hawkers are there, people are on the streets, morning and evening, they're selling things, Monday to Sunday. Where are the enforcers? What has happened to this trade order? Okay, thank you for that information. Finally, James from Gulu, is it true that the industrial park in Mbale was built or established in a wetland? Where is NEMA? Where is government? Very good questions there. We'll leave it at that for the messages now, and we'll get to the parting shots. I'll come from Honorable Rose, Honorable John, Honorable Midday, Professor Balunywa, the Right Honorable Justine, and finally the Honorable Dr. Chris.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really nice to be here and give my views on the various topics, and I'll be grateful to come again. And to the people of Terego, don't be caught the wrong side. I do not want to defend anybody destroying environment, nor in corruption, nor in anything that is against the law. Let's be law-abiding. I still love you. I'll be there very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable John.
Well, thank you so much, Timothy, for the program. I want to encourage Ugandans to continue observing the trade order, avoid unnecessary trading on the streets. Let's pave way for the water and the ecosystem to operate by not antagonizing the wetlands. And let's try as much as we can to observe the laws that give sanity and order to this country. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mbide.
I equally support the trade order, but with an addendum that government needs to address the two things, the capital loss and the debt spiral by those that have lost business. That needs to be, of course, addressed in order for this to have a sustainable approach. And finally, in terms of environment, we need a scientific research on sustainable use than majorly stopping people from utilizing land, which is a factor of production.
Thank you very much. Professor.
Thank you, Timothy. I think we've got where we are because of laxity in implementation and enforcement of the law, and we shouldn't continue there. That's what the trade law is saying. Don't continue there. And all this will lie in planning our towns. Our old towns like Kampala, you can't plan them anymore. They are simply huge slums. For instance, what is happening when the high rises in Kololo, you know, if you pass Kololo, there are so many, I'm wondering in the future where the vehicles will pass in Kololo. Now, is Kololo supposed to have flats, you know, apartments? I mean, that the same thing as going into the wetlands. So is there a law? If there's a law, they shouldn't be happening. So my view is really, it's about planning. We should be able to plan our towns in such a way that we accommodate everybody, and then strictly implement the law so that we don't get into this mess.
Thank you. Yeah. Right Honorable Justin.
My word is that we, when given a responsibility to do it, if you are the ones in charge of supervising, regulating or enforcement, please do it without discrimination. Because if you don't do it, the effects affect many, including the innocent. Because when people encroach on the wetlands, do the refilling of the lake, for which Honorable Mbide says doesn't see any problem, but this runoff go to the lake from the fertilizers, sometimes the fake fertilizers in our gardens, and affect the aquatic life. And for us who have fish as part of our culture, and also Honorable Mbide comes from that community which also has fish as part of their culture, it distorts a lot, including the culture. So when the president talks of everybody must work, we should all work. And when you look at the National Development Plan 4, when they talk of the tenfold, it's not about tenfold of increasing resources. No, it's about tenfold of increasing efforts in whatever we are doing. Whatever we are doing, whatever you are doing, whether at home or as somebody in government or as an enforcement officer, do it times 10 so that there are results. But most importantly, most of this is caused by corruption. So we are all now reaping from the effects of corruption. So let's now fight corruption together, because it's not in the air, it is with us. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Lastly, the Honorable Dr. Chris.
The President has declared this term, Ksanja, no more sleep and no corruption. And of course that is true for us who are serving the government and the parliament, but it should also be true for the rest of the citizens. And all of us are striving for a better Uganda, whether you are in the government or opposition, as long as we are Ugandan. We shall only attain a better Uganda if we follow the laws which protect the environment, laws which speak to how the trade should be organized, laws which say we should not be corrupt, so that we bring sanity in our country. Even the other first issue of democracy, human rights and governance, we need order in the way we run our politics and the way we run our lives. So let's be patriotic, let's do the correct thing, let's respect the laws and respect each other so that we can work for the prosperity of all Ugandans, because all of us are striving to have a better quality of life, to live long and enjoy this country called Uganda. So let's be disciplined as citizens of Uganda in order to have a very great future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to thank the gentlemen and ladies that have made this show worthwhile tonight to discuss these patent issues, but also I want to thank the production team for making today possible. For you who has been very important to watch us up to this very hour, and just two messages. One, that somewhere you talked about the encroachment in Mukono. I'll address it to the ministers after, and also a question about ICT. We'll be sending it to the Right Honorable Justin to be able to address it later. But thank you very much for watching, and we'll end with this quote. If you choose to close your eyes while facts are being said, you will learn by accident. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
In a nation hungry for truth, a world where every story matters, there exists a beacon of trust and reliability. For decades, they've been our voice and our window to the world, holding the mirror of our history. With 4 TV stations and 11 radio channels spanning 27 languages, they stand as guardians of information, defenders of truth. With Mascari Heritage Advantage, they uphold every citizen's right to reliable and free information. Their archived stories shaped our past and illuminate our present. Yet now, as new challenges arise and the world evolves, their mission faces its greatest test yet. Be part of our journey and let's navigate the unknown, uncover the untold, and safeguard our future together. Tune into your public broadcaster, for it is the intersection of trust and truth. Because to UBC, your story, every story, and every voice matters. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.